With how vast the human mind is, there is no limit to what we create and what can frighten us. Over the course of gaming history, designers have put their creativity to the test by making literally anything scary, or at least trying to. From robotic animals to cartoons to math teachers, it feels like there is no limit the horror game genre can reach. And I think we found the newest best example of that in Choo Choo Charles. A few years ago, an independent game developer named Gavin Eisenbez, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, I probably did, started creating a game going by the name 2 Star Games. He started and finished the project all by himself while also recording his progress on his YouTube channel. And just a few months ago, he released it to the public to astounding views. YouTubers, theorists, and horror fans came together to enjoy this masterpiece of a game, and not many people had issues with it. Within a few days, it was showing up on everyone's YouTube feed, even those who probably don't play horror games all that much. And now we're here, only a month or two later, and I'm doing a video about it. Now, I already played this game on this channel, and if you want to watch it, I'll link the playlist in the description. But after I finished it, I instantly started geeking out about it. I had to cut about 5 to 7 minutes of footage from the last episode alone, where I was just nerding out about how much I liked this game. After recording, I immediately started writing down notes about what I wanted to talk about, and now it's time for me to let it all out. So here we go, the Choo Choo Charles retrospective. The story starts off with a man named Eugene talking on the phone with the player character, us, who is a famed monster hunter who keeps all of our monsters in a museum. However, the attractions haven't been doing so well recently, but our good old friend Eugene has a job for us that might help our business. Right off the bat, this is a great way to introduce our character. Instead of us being some Joe Schmo that was just at the wrong place at the wrong time and need to survive, we are a well-trained and well-known monster hunter, which makes our actions and capabilities more realistic. After the call, we meet up with Eugene and he takes us to the island of Aranirum and talks about the monster we will be fighting. Charles is a half-train, half-spider demon that's been terrorizing the island for quite a while. It's gotten so bad that the locals have been plotting Charles's demise for months, and now that they have us, we just need to activate the plan. He takes us to a bunker where we find our train fitted with a machine gun to damage Charles. Immediately after we start up the train, we have our first interaction with Charles. We barely get out of the encounter, but Eugene wasn't so lucky. He tells us to find the eggs and find his son before he takes his final breath and dies. If we are going to take down Charles, we're going to have to get a lot stronger. Throughout our gameplay, we meet the inhabitants of the island who help us out with upgrading our train to hopefully take down Charles. It's through these villagers that we hear about 3 eggs that Charles is connected to, and if we manage to destroy the eggs, then we can trap Charles into a mortal fight. So we set out to obtain these eggs, and it's here we find out that someone has put guards in these mines where the eggs are located, and we must stealthily traverse them without being found. That someone is Warren Charles III, the owner of the mining company on the island. He's been doing some shady stuff ever since Charles showed up. Talking to the locals and reading notes makes it seem like he's protecting Charles. These eggs are the only thing that can weaken Charles, but Warren hid them and had people guard them heavily, with anyone who trespasses getting shot on sight. So it definitely feels like he's protecting them. However, towards the end of the game, we learn that maybe he knows something even more dangerous than Charles. But it's too late. We got all the eggs and we're about to destroy them. Before we make a demon omelet, Warren tries to talk to us in person to talk some sense into us and tries to convince us not to go through with it. It's an interesting part of the game to see him in person, because before this we only hear about his influence and power over the island and its people. So seeing him now after all of that adds a nice reveal towards the end of the game. We don't listen, however, and we destroy the eggs with a weird looking D4 dice. All the guards and Warren start panicking as Charles shows up and is seemingly powered up by the eggs. We were warned about it previously, but I guess we forgot. We manage to book it to our train where we start the final battle. We've done this many times before, so it shouldn't be that hard, right? It's actually kind of hard, but I'll talk about that later. After a long and grueling fight, we lead him to a bridge where we blow it to smithereens. As Charles is blown into the air, we see that he isn't the biggest fan of heights, and along with that, he's not gonna like what he finds at the bottom of this bridge. It's a spike. Hooray! Charles is dead! As we see his body twitch, the sky turns normal again and the credits roll. But that's not the end. Suddenly, we cut to a large cave where we see one more egg, and then pans to a whole cave system of hundreds, maybe thousands of eggs ready to hatch, and more Charles-like demons ready to roam. The story of Choo Choo Charles is a very interesting one, and I think one of the things that it has going for it is the fact that it doesn't double down for how silly it is. The concept of a spider train doesn't really feel like a scary idea at face value, but Gavin doesn't cave in and make the whole game full of jokes and slapstick humor. He also doesn't try to make this the next Resident Evil or Silent Hill and adds jump scares after jump scare. He finds a perfect balance of horror and humor to make a game and story that is satisfying. Honestly, I think the funniest thing in this game is how Warren dresses. Man looks like he shopped at a Spirit Halloween with this Curious George man in the yellow hat looking ass. Choo Choo Charles is the most successful attempt at an open world horror game in my opinion. It all starts with Charles's AI. As I was playing the game, I was trying to figure out how he operates. After a while, I found out that Charles is always active around the island, so you can run into him at any time. Every once in a while, Charles will beeline for you in your general direction, so there is a small chance you can evade him. This also means that it's smart to not stay in the same area for too long. If you do, then you're making yourself a sitting duck, so make sure you're always moving. Also, every once in a while, during his roaming phase, you'll be able to see him in the distance, just scuttling around. Seeing this constant threat adds tension to your gameplay by making you realize that one slow movement could mean your demise. During your fights with Charles, you will hear his whistles getting louder as he gets closer just before he shows up. You will have to use your weapons to chip away at his health until he takes a certain amount of damage and backs off. This is why we need the eggs. If he gets hurt too much, he leaves to go heal. However, if you don't do enough damage before he gets your train down to 0, the train slows down and Charles starts circling around you before picking you up and staring at you with his milky dead eyes, and then swallows you whole. After you die, you respawn at your train with 0 health and you lose between 1 to 3 scraps, so hopefully you have enough to heal your train and move on. With how much you fight Charles before the final boss, some people might ask if the fights get tedious after a while, and to that I say yes and no. Yes, it can feel tedious at times because you're using the same mechanics, but on the other hand, with how big the island is and how vast the terrain can be, geography makes the fights more unpredictable. I've lost count on how many times Charles slows down because of a hill or a building. Thinking the fight's over, I start to calm down, only to notice him speeding back up and continuing the fight. The geography also makes the beginning of the fight unpredictable as well. Even though you hear whistles every time he is near, due to the layout of the terrain, you never know what direction he's coming from, which adds suspense and stress as well. Other than the unpredictability of the world and Charles's tactics, his movements are also extremely unsettling. The way he scuttles around stiffly fits the way a spider moves. He doesn't talk, he just makes scraggly and raspy noises, like a feral animal that's been starving for days. His permanent smile and pure white eyes instantly convince you that what we are witnessing is not of this world, but another possibly outside of human comprehension, which is another way Charles is the perfect monster. The other main threat of the game is the guards that protect the eggs and are also spread out across camps on the island. Like I said before, you need to sneak around them to get to the eggs. However, that isn't 100% true. What I mean by that is that if you are found, you aren't grabbed and taken out of the area or just immediately killed, you're just shot at. The guards aren't the fastest and don't have the best aim, and even if you are shot, they don't do much damage to your health, so you don't really need to sneak around. You just gotta bolt for the egg because you're goddamn Superman for some reason. I don't know if that was a choice on purpose to make the guards do literally no damage, but personally, I'm glad it's the way it is. In my eyes, it gives the player a choice of whether to sneak by undetected or just pull a Leroy Jenkins and bolt in with no regard for your safety. As someone who isn't really a fan of stealth in games, I'm glad that I got this choice. It adds this option to either challenge yourself or just go in guns blazing. The look of these guards isn't something to shrug at either. The masks that they wear are absolutely terrifying. Anytime you get too close or turn around while you're being chased, and seeing these giant eyes and bloody faces definitely adds even more stress to the gameplay aside from Charles. While not my favorite part of the game, I'm definitely glad that they are an added antagonist. The only other humans you will see on this island are the locals that help you out by giving you quests to advance through the game. There are 3 different kinds of quests you can accept: required, optional, and weapon missions. They're all self-explanatory as to what they represent. Required missions are where you go get the eggs as well as the explosive to detonate that bridge at the end of the boss fight, as I mentioned before. Weapon missions give you a small task in exchange for a weapon, which I'll get into in a minute. And finally, the optional missions are where you can get scrap metal. You don't need to complete all of them to finish the game, but to give yourself the biggest chance of winning, you're gonna want to complete them all. All of the locals have very interesting personalities, everything from gung-ho rednecks to rich nobles to the pickle lady. The way that these NPCs act is a perfect blend of terrible and normality. Yes, they are scared that one day Charles is just gonna eat them, but they've also had him around for so long that they can go out about their lives just living with this oversized pest running around. I think my favorite has to be the Witch. She's cuckoo insane, but she's one of the most interesting personalities, without being annoying. Another thing that makes the locals more human is what they do if Charles is nearby. If you're by an NPC, when Charles shows up, they'll run into a building and cower in fear while the Charles runs around. Another thing I forgot to mention about Charles and his AI is that he can't break or interact with the buildings, so it acts as another safe place for the player if they're too far from the train. All he does is puppy guards for a little bit and then wanders off, but it's still a stressful encounter because you'll get as close as you can to Charles without him being able to kill you. However, the main safe place and weapon you have during the game is your train. I love how our main way of getting around is also our main source of defense because we instantly grow attached to it since it's our only way to fight against the literal spider demon behind us. It also makes any time we leave our train to do something else extremely stressful. Sometimes during the game, you need to leave your train, whether it's to switch tracks to travel in different directions or get to a mission that's extremely far away. Anytime you're not on your train, you're in danger. Over the course of the game, you will upgrade the train's base attributes of speed, damage, and armor. You're going to want to max out all of these attributes as soon as possible if you want the best chance to beat Charles. As you upgrade your train, you see it physically change. It starts off from this basic locomotive to a glorified tank. Another form of firepower you get is the weapons that you can obtain throughout the island. There are a total of 4 weapons that you can get for your train. You have the basic machine gun you get at the beginning, a flamethrower called bug spray you get after stopping a house fire, a rocket launcher called Boomer you obtain after collecting a box of rockets from a mine, and finally the armor-piercing gun called Bob after obtaining the barrels from a guard camp. After his death, his wife requests that we name it Bob after her late husband. You can use whatever combination of these weapons to fight Charles. My personal lineup is Bug Spray to slow him down, Boomer to get some heavy damages, and then Bob or Machine Gun depending on how I feel. One more final thing you can use to upgrade your train is paint. You start off with yellow, but you will find cans of paint around the island, either in chests you need to pick or just laying around. I chose purple because of course I did. Alright, we're all decked out and we are now ready to fight Charles. Like I said before, this boss fight is more difficult than your previous altercations with him. While a lot of the mechanics are the same, we're now dealing with a powered up Charles. He's faster and more sporadic in his movements. He also has the additional ability to teleport himself and even teleport us. This boss fight is a good blend of familiarity and difference, and since Charles looks completely different, it adds a little more terror to our interaction with him. After you take off a certain amount of damage, Charles gets more and more angry and accesses those additional abilities I talked about. Once we get him down to 0, we get him to the bridge and blow him to Kingdom Come. You know, it's weird because if Charles can teleport, then why didn't he just teleport out of the way of the spike? Strange. Anyways, overall I really like the mechanics of this game with no complaints. I know some people don't like the sound Charles makes or the way the guards fight, but I personally love them, and I think the mechanics mixed with the story creates the perfect ending for the game, which makes you wonder, what's next? Where can we go from here? Well, the developer of the game, Gavin, has mentioned that he's going to spend the near future refining the games with patches and free DLC of more quests and NPCs, as well as creating ports of the games so that console players can enjoy the game as well. When questioned if a sequel is in the future, Gavin said that he wouldn't be opposed to making a sequel and would actually love to make one, so I guess we'll see. One more thing I wanted to mention is my personal theory about what the continuation of the story could be if this were turned into a series. So here it goes. So since we had that whole cave of Charles eggs, there is a potential of having a Charles army on our hands. My theory is that Charles starts off as an animalistic looking creature that can take over objects and make them part of his own body. In this case, it was a train. However, if one of these entities can get access to other vehicles or objects, we will have to deal with all different kinds of threats. Cars, planes, tanks, a lawnmower, I don't know. The point is that if those eggs manage to merge with anything else, we could be in a lot of trouble. And then maybe our local monster hunter might just turn into a national hero. And that, my friends, is Choo Choo Charles, the game that only one man thought about, and the game we didn't know we loved so much. A game that pits us against a spider train from hell and forces us to become the most badass train conductor ever. And that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the first real game review I've made, and I wanted my first one to be about a game that I really enjoyed, and Choo Choo Charles is probably one of my favorite indie horror games now, so I think it's fitting. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you really liked it, then maybe consider liking and subscribing. It lets me know what kind of videos you guys like, and it allows me to broaden my audience even more to entertain even more people. Make sure to follow me on Instagram so you can stay updated on what and when I post, and also have a say in what kind of videos I make next. I also post my art on there, so go give it a follow. Thanks for watching again, and in the meantime, make sure to relax today.